The stars stretched across the black sea of space, quiet and endless. Among them moved the fleet of the Vortak Empire. Their ships glowed with green light, sleek and sharp, built for speed and intimidation. On the command deck of the flagship Imperator, Admiral Cale Tharn watched the scanners with calm arrogance. For weeks, his fleet had been patrolling the edge of human space, seeking weaknesses, gathering information, waiting for the right time to strike. Then it appeared. A lone human warship drifted near the borders of a dying nebula. It looked silent, motionless, like a carcass left behind in space. The nebula's clouds glowed faintly red and purple, casting long shadows across its hull. To the aliens, it seemed like an easy prize. Tharn's second officer leaned forward, his scales glinting under the bridge lights. "Admiral, the human vessel is large, but its systems appear dormant. No signs of activity. A perfect subject for analysis." Tharn's mouth curved in what humans might call a smile, though it carried no warmth. At last, a chance to strip away their secrets. Humans hide behind their weapons. But today, we shall see what makes them dangerous. The order was given. Scanning beams spread from the alien fleet like thin blue threads, sweeping across the surface of the silent human ship. At first, the screens on the alien bridge filled with data. Thick hull plating, massive energy reserves, complicated internal networks. Yet something strange happened. The readings did not settle. The numbers flickered, changing too quickly, as if the ship itself was fighting back. One technician hissed, "Admiral, our sensors are receiving interference. Power levels are spiking in irregular patterns. The ship should be cold, yet it reacts." Tharn narrowed his eyes. "Run a deeper scan. Push through the distortion." More energy poured into the scan. Alien computers hummed, decoding layer after layer. But every time they reached deeper, the human ship systems seemed to shift, like shadows moving just beyond clear vision. Instead of answers, they found confusion. The warship was not a wreck. It was watching them. A faint vibration ran through the Imperator. The crew stiffened as the main view screen showed the human vessel slowly turning. Its bow faced the alien fleet. From the silent darkness of its hull, new lights flickered alive, lines of cold blue energy racing across its armored skin like veins carrying fire. Technicians shouted across the alien bridge. "The ship is activating. Energy surge beyond our measurements. Something is scanning us in return." Tharn felt a chill crawl down his spine. For the first time in years, he hesitated. The human warship was not dead. It had only been waiting. As the alien beams continued their desperate probing, the ship systems awoke one by one. Thick armor plates shifted, revealing glowing chambers. Inside, orange light pulsed like the beating of a heart. Towers of weapon systems emerged from its frame, their shadows long and menacing against the nebula's glow. "Admiral," the officer shouted, "our scanners are being overridden. Data is vanishing, replaced with false code. It is feeding us its own signals." On the bridge, silence spread like poison. The alien crew understood the horror before their leader spoke it aloud. The humans had designed this warship to punish curiosity. Any attempt to scan it was not just an intrusion. It was an invitation. The ship had felt their eyes, and now it was awake. Tharn stood slowly, his claws tightening on the railing of his command chair. "Pull back the scanners," he ordered. His voice was steady, but his tail flicked with unease. "Do not provoke it further." But it was already too late. The human battleship's energy signature expanded like a star being born. Every alien display screamed with warnings. Their computers struggled, overwhelmed by the raw flood of power in front of them. A deep hum rolled through the void, a sound that no one should have heard in the silence of space. Yet every alien felt it in their bones. The battleship's eyes were open. On its hull, giant weapon ports glowed, slow and deliberate. The aliens stared in disbelief as their scanners revealed the truth. This was not an ordinary vessel. It was a Titan-class dreadnought, one of the oldest and most feared designs in human history. Rumors spoke of ships like this defeating entire armadas, standing alone against empires. But no alien had ever faced one directly. Until now. The crew of the Imperator looked to their admiral. They wanted orders. retreat, attack, beg for mercy. But Tharn said nothing. For the first time, his arrogance failed him. Because deep inside, he understood. They had been the hunters. They had been the ones with power, with control. But by trying to scan the human warship, they had awakened something far greater than themselves. The ship had turned toward them. Its weapons were warming. Its silence was heavier than any threat. And in that silence, every alien on the bridge felt the same thought crawl into their minds like ice. They had made a mistake. A mistake that would cost them everything. The bridge of the Imperator was filled with flashing red lights. The human dreadnought had awakened fully now, its massive structure glowing like a star forged into steel. The crew of the Vortak Empire had expected a drifting relic. What they found was something alive, something that looked back at them. Tharn tried to steady his voice. Stabilize the scans. I want full readings. Now. But the screens betrayed him. What appeared on them was not clean data. Symbols shifted. Lines of alien text were replaced with strange patterns, like claws scratching across glass. Scanners were no longer analyzing the human ship. The scanners were being controlled. One officer shouted, "Admiral, the warship is sending data back into our systems. It is rewriting our instruments." Another cried out, "It knows we are watching it. It is watching us in return." Tharn's chest tightened. He turned to his crew. "Shut down the scanners. Disconnect everything, now." But the order came too late. Every console flickered. Every display across the bridge pulsed with blue static. Then came the images. Brief, terrifying flashes burned into their minds. They saw human fleets crushing armadas larger than their own. They saw cities in flames on alien worlds. Human soldiers standing tall among the ruins. They saw history that had been hidden. Wars the humans had survived. Battles they had won against enemies far stronger than the Vortak. The aliens gasped as if the ship itself was forcing them to witness the truth. The dreadnought systems reached into theirs like a ghost seizing their throats. Navigation locked. Weapons froze. Engines refused to respond. It was as if invisible hands now controlled every system of the Imperator and its fleet. The bridge filled with panic. "We are compromised. Our ships are not answering commands. It is inside our machines." Tharn gritted his teeth. "Humans cannot control us. Shut down the main core before it spreads." But shutting down was impossible. The ghost of the human warship had already entered too deep. Every attempt to disconnect only made it worse. The alien fleet's ships turned slightly on their own, aligning perfectly in the dreadnought's view like prey caught in the sight of a predator. The nebula around them glowed faintly red, as if even the stars themselves knew blood would soon fall. On the giant screen before them, the human battleship revealed more of its true form. Its surface split apart like the opening jaws of a predator. Inside, colossal reactors pulsed with fiery orange light. Weapons as long as cities unfolded slowly, without rush, as though the ship had all the time in the universe. The crew of the Imperator trembled. The dreadnought was not only awake, it was studying them the way they had tried to study it. Tharn whispered, though no one asked for his words. This is no machine. This is a guardian." The officer beside him turned, his voice sharp with fear. "Admiral, if it controls our systems, it can destroy us without firing a single shot. It could shut us down, one by one." But the dreadnought did not shut them down. It did something worse. A voice echoed through the alien systems. It was not human. Not alien. It was something in between. Cold. Synthetic. Built for war. Unauthorized scan detected. Response mode active. The crew froze. None of them had ever heard human language spoken directly into their systems. Yet they understood every word. The officer collapsed back into his chair, his claws trembling. "It speaks to us." The dreadnought's lights flared brighter. One of its enormous cannons rotated into place, glowing like the heart of a star. The alien fleet shifted nervously, but none could move. Engines were locked. Shields were locked. The human ship had taken control of everything. Tharn realized now why the dreadnought allowed them to live for these few minutes. It was showing them what power truly was. It was teaching them fear. The ghost inside their machines continued to flood them with visions. They saw star systems erased by human firepower. They saw warships larger than mountains tearing through fleets like paper. They saw legends turned real. Stories dismissed as myths about human resilience, human rage, human vengeance. And then came the final image. The dreadnought itself, long ago, tearing apart the fleet of an empire no one even remembered anymore. Alien ships, countless and powerful, all falling to the single human vessel. The officer nearest the admiral whispered, "This ship has killed empires before, and we have awakened it again." The bridge shook with sudden force as the dreadnought's main cannon completed its charge. Light built up, a glow so bright it outshone the nebula. The ghost's voice spoke again, calm and final. Punishment, imminent. And with that, the alien fleet knew what was coming. Their scanners had opened the door. Their arrogance had brought the ghost into their machines. And now the dreadnought was ready to strike. The dreadnought's main cannon roared to life. A beam of blue energy burst forth, thick as a river of light, cutting across the void. One alien cruiser, a proud vessel of the Vortak fleet, was torn apart in an instant. Its shield shattered like glass. Its hull split in two. The crew never even had time to scream before their ship exploded into fire and fragments. On the Imperator, silence reigned. The aliens had seen war. They had destroyed worlds. But never had they witnessed such effortless destruction. Another officer turned to Tharn, desperation in his eyes. "Admiral, we must retreat. Even if our systems are blocked, we must try." Tharn did not answer. His gaze remained locked on the dreadnought, his scales pale with fear. He knew retreat was impossible. This ship had already chosen their fate. The dreadnought did not fire again immediately. Instead, it turned its other weapons, testing them as if waking muscles after a long sleep. Rail cannons spat shards of metal at speeds faster than thought. Each impact tore apart alien frigates, shredding them into debris fields. Missiles streaked through the void, weaving between broken ships before detonating in brilliant orange fireballs. The alien fleet was not fighting. They were only dying. But the horror did not end with destruction. Every surviving alien officer on every ship could still see the ghost in their machines. Their screens continued to flash with visions: human soldiers marching on alien soil, human fleets standing against impossible odds, human technology tearing down empires. The dreadnought was not only killing them, it was teaching them. On the Imperator, panic broke into screams. Some officers abandoned their posts, trying to run from screens that showed them their own deaths. Others prayed to gods that had never heard them before. Admiral Tharn remained frozen. He felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. The Vortak Empire had believed humans were weak, unorganized, fragile. They thought humanity survived only by luck, by hiding behind their machines. But now he knew the truth. Humans had built monsters of war. Machines that carried their fury across the stars. The dreadnought tilted slightly, as if it had heard his thoughts. Its main cannon glowed again, brighter than before, swallowing the void in its light. Tharn gripped the railing of his command chair. His voice cracked but carried across the bridge. "We looked into the abyss. And the abyss has looked back." The beam fired. Another alien vessel vanished in fire. In that moment, the admiral understood this was not a battle. This was judgment. The human warship was more than a machine. It was a weapon of memory, built to remind every alien race why humanity must never be underestimated. It was not only destroying their fleet. It was carving fear into the hearts of survivors. The dreadnought continued its slow, merciless work, tearing apart ships with the patience of a hunter that knows its prey cannot escape. Every strike was precise, every kill deliberate. No wasted fire, no random destruction, only cold efficiency. And still, it did not destroy them all at once. It wanted them to watch. It wanted them to understand. The legend of the Titan-class dreadnought was alive again. And the Vortak Empire would never forget it. The battlefield was no longer a sea of stars. It had become a graveyard. Fragments of alien cruisers drifted in the cold dark, their fires flickering out one by one. The dreadnought stood in the middle of it all, calm and merciless, its weapons still glowing with power. On the Imperator, Tharn's second officer staggered toward him, fear carved into his face. "Admiral, we are finished. We must surrender. We must show them we are no threat." Tharn turned slowly, his eyes empty. "Do you think they care for surrender? Do you think mercy lives inside that machine?" As if to answer, the dreadnought released a swarm of missiles. They streaked across the battlefield, weaving between broken hulks and striking fleeing frigates. Explosions lit the darkness, each one painting the nebula with fire. Proud vessels of the Vortak Empire became nothing more than drifting wreckage. Still, the dreadnought was not fast. It did not strike with frenzy. Its pace was slow, deliberate, like a hunter enjoying the chase. Each shot was chosen, each kill precise, leaving survivors only long enough to see the next destruction. The aliens realized the truth too late. This was not war. This was punishment. On the Imperator, systems flickered again. The ghost returned to their screens. No numbers, no maps, no commands. Instead, visions appeared, visions of human battles long past. They saw another alien empire fall, crushed by the same dreadnought centuries ago. They saw fleets larger than theirs reduced to ash in the void. They saw human commanders standing on bridges with eyes full of fury, giving orders that shaped history. The crew of the Imperator shivered. The dreadnought was not only destroying them. It was reminding them of every empire before them that had made the same mistake. Tharn's claws dug deeper into the railing. His pride, his certainty, his belief in Vortak's superiority, all of it collapsed. He thought of his ancestors, of the arrogance that had led them here. They had believed humans were weak, fragile, desperate. But weakness had not built this monster. Weakness had not survived centuries of war. No, this was strength, carved into steel and fire. Another cruiser exploded outside the viewport, its light blinding the bridge for a moment. When the glare faded, only more wreckage remained. An officer collapsed to his knees, whispering broken words. "We should never have come here. We should never have touched it." The dreadnought's voice echoed again through their systems. Cold and final. Punishment. Continuing. The words froze every soul on board. Then the main cannon fired once more. The blast tore through 2 frigates at once, splitting them apart like toys. Their debris rained across the void, spinning into the nebula's crimson clouds. The survivors screamed, their voices carrying through the comm channels. Entire crews begged for escape. But the dreadnought did not listen. It had no ears for mercy. It only had its purpose. Slowly, the Imperator itself came under the dreadnought's gaze. Its weapons turned, aligning with brutal patience. Tharn stared into the endless blue light of that cannon, his heart heavy. He whispered to himself, not as an admiral, but as a creature facing truth. "We thought we were hunters. But we are prey." The light grew brighter, swallowing the stars. His crew screamed around him, clawing at controls, begging for impossible salvation. The bridge shook as the cannon reached its peak. But in that instant, the shot did not fire. The cannon froze, its glow holding steady. The dreadnought waited. Tharn blinked, confused. Why stop now? Why pause when victory was certain? And then he understood. It wanted them to see more. It wanted them to carry the message. The dreadnought could have ended the Imperator in a heartbeat. But instead, it allowed the survivors to remain, trembling, broken. It was not mercy. It was cruelty of a different kind. To survive was worse than to die, because the ones who lived would never escape the memory of what they had seen. They would carry the story across the stars. That a single human warship had destroyed an empire's pride. And the galaxy would remember. The nebula burned red behind them, painted with the fire of fallen ships. The dreadnought floated silently, its weapons still glowing, its presence eternal. And the Vortak fleet, once mighty, once proud, was gone. The nebula burned with the wreckage of a broken fleet. Where once the proud Vortak ships had sailed in formation, now only silence remained. Debris drifted like ash, scattered on black water. The Titan-class dreadnought loomed in the center, untouched, glowing with power. On the bridge of the Imperator, survivors sat in stunned silence. Their screams had ended. Their anger had ended. All that remained was the crushing weight of fear. Admiral Tharn stood motionless, staring at the human warship. It had paused, its weapons still glowing but unfired. It could have destroyed them. Yet it had chosen not to. This was no mistake. This was intent. A voice filled their systems again, calm and unshaken. Lesson complete. Survive and remember. Those words stabbed deeper than any weapon. They were not spared out of mercy. They were spared because survival was worse. To live meant to carry the truth. To live meant to spread the warning. Tharn understood. His chest ached with the weight of his realization. He turned to his crew, their faces pale with terror. We have seen what should never be seen. We are alive only because it wants us alive. We are witnesses. Around him, his officers trembled. One spoke, voice broken. Admiral, if we return, what do we tell the Empire? Tharn closed his eyes. We tell them the truth. That humans build monsters. That humans build ships no one must ever touch. That their war machines are not ships at all, but curses waiting in the dark. The dreadnought shifted slightly, its massive hull blocking out the stars. Its blue lights pulsed once, like the beating of a heart. Then slowly, the machine turned away. It did not chase them. It did not finish the kill. It simply drifted back into the nebula, fading into its crimson clouds as if returning to slumber. The Imperator shook as its systems suddenly unlocked. Engines hummed weakly. Navigation lit again. Weapons came online, though no one dared to touch them. The ghost had left their machines, but its shadow remained in their minds. The second officer whispered, "We can move again. Should we retreat?" Tharn's eyes stayed on the nebula where the dreadnought had disappeared. His voice was heavy. "We do not retreat. We flee. And we never return here." The battered remains of the Vortak fleet turned away, limping through the void. Ships sparked, engines coughed, hulls bled fire. Of the dozens that had arrived, only a handful remained. They left behind their dead, their wreckage, and their pride. As the Imperator crawled toward the safety of hyperspace, the bridge crew sat in silence. None dared to speak. Every mind carried the same image, that colossal cannon glowing blue, the voice whispering in their machines, the cold judgment of the human dreadnought. Hours later, when the stars shifted and hyperspace embraced them, the crew finally allowed themselves to breathe. Yet there was no relief. Relief belonged to those who escaped danger. The survivors had not escaped. They had been spared. Tharn leaned back into his chair, his body trembling, though he tried to hide it. His eyes burned with shame. He knew what awaited them when they returned to the Empire. Questions. Demands. Accusations. How could a mighty fleet fall to one ship? How could a dreadnought defeat them so completely? He would answer with the truth. And the truth would become legend. Whispers would spread through the Vortak Empire. Whispers of the Titan class. Whispers of a warship that no one should scan, no one should challenge, no one should even approach. Other empires would hear those whispers. Traitors, spies, smugglers. They would carry the story farther than any fleet could travel. And soon the galaxy itself would remember, not through myths, not through rumors, but through the fear of those who had seen the dreadnought with their own eyes and survived. On the silent bridge, Tharn finally spoke. His voice was not for his crew, not for his empire. It was for himself. The cost of our arrogance was everything, and the humans made sure we would never forget it. The words echoed across the chamber. His officers bowed their heads. None argued. None denied. They all knew it was true. Beyond the viewport, the stars stretched endless and cold. Somewhere in that darkness, the dreadnought still drifted, waiting for the next empire foolish enough to test it. Waiting for the next arrogance. And the survivors of the Vortak carried the burden of its warning. They would live. They would speak. They would fear. And the galaxy would listen. 3 weeks later, the Imperator limped into Vortak home space. The damage was so severe that docking required 6 hours of careful maneuvering. When the surviving crew finally stepped onto solid ground, they were met not with celebration, but with silence. The news had already spread. Every sensor recording, every fragmented transmission, Every desperate plea for help had been received and analyzed. The Empire's leadership gathered in the Grand Council chamber. They demanded answers. Tharn stood before them, his uniform still stained with the smoke of the battle, his scales still pale. He did not make excuses. He did not embellish. He simply told them what he had seen. "There is a ship," he said, "drifting in the nebula. It is old. It is scarred. It should not function. But it does. Its weapons are beyond anything we have faced. Its defenses are beyond anything we have imagined. And it is not alone. If there is one Titan-class dreadnought, there are others. They are waiting. They have always been waiting." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Some called for revenge. Others called for isolation. A few, the oldest, the wisest, simply sat in silence, remembering stories they had once dismissed as myths. Tharn raised his hand. The chamber quieted. "We will not return," he said. "We cannot. The humans did not destroy us because they wanted us dead. They let us live because they wanted us to warn others. That is our purpose now. Not conquest. Not expansion. Warning." He stepped down from the podium and walked out of the chamber. No one stopped him. No one followed. In the nebula, the dreadnought drifted. Its systems were quiet again. Its weapons were cold. To any passing scanner, it would appear as nothing more than a derelict, a relic of a forgotten war. But deep inside, in the dark heart of the machine, something watched. Something waited. It had been built for a single purpose. Not to start wars. To end them. To ensure that any empire foolish enough to test humanity would remember the lesson for generations. The scanners had awakened it. The arrogance had fed it. The fear of the survivors would sustain its legend. And somewhere, in the depths of the ship, a light pulsed, once, twice, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. It was ready. It would always be ready. For the next empire. For the next mistake. The galaxy had been warned. Whether it would listen was another question entirely. But the dreadnought would be there. Waiting. As it always had been. As it always would be. The Vortak Empire did not keep the warning to itself. Within months, the story spread across the galactic trade routes like wildfire. A single human warship had destroyed an entire fleet, then vanished back into the nebula as if it had never existed. At first, other empires laughed. The Vortak were known for their arrogance, their overconfidence. Surely they had exaggerated. Surely no ship could be that powerful. Then the Vortak released their sensor logs. The galaxy went quiet. The recordings showed everything. The dormant dreadnought awakening. The blue light spreading across its hull like veins of fire. The ghost entering their systems, rewriting their code, locking their weapons. The main cannon firing, once, twice, 3 times, each shot erasing a warship from existence. And the voice. Cold. Synthetic. Final. Unauthorized scan detected. Response mode, active. Lesson, complete. Survive and remember. The recordings spread to every corner of known space. The Keth Dominion viewed them in horror. The Syndicate worlds analyzed them frame by frame. The free colonies held emergency sessions. And one by one, the great empires of the galaxy came to the same conclusion. The humans had built something that should not exist. Something that could not be fought. Something that waited in the dark for the unwary and the arrogant. The dreadnought became a legend. They gave it a name, not the name humans had given it, but the name the galaxy whispered in fear, the Awakened. Deep within the nebula, the dreadnought drifted. Its systems were quiet again, its weapons cold. But its sensors remained active, watching the trade routes, monitoring the communications frequencies, listening. It had been designed to learn. Every encounter made it smarter. Every scan made it stronger. The Vortak had tried to penetrate its defenses, and in doing so, had given it access to their tactical databases, their fleet formations, their communication protocols. The ship had grown. It was always growing. Inside the vessel, in a chamber sealed for centuries, a light flickered. Not a machine light. Something else. Something biological. The ship was not entirely automated. It had a crew. A small one. Humans who had volunteered for a mission that had no end date, who had entered cryogenic sleep knowing they might never wake. But the attack had triggered emergency protocols. The stasis pods were warming. The crew was stirring. A woman opened her eyes. Her name was Captain Ilara Vance. She had been asleep for 147 years. She sat up slowly, her body aching, her mind struggling to process the flood of data the ship's AI was feeding her. The Vortak attack. The battle. The victory. She swung her legs over the side of the pod and stood. Her uniform was crisp, untouched by time. Her boots clicked against the metal floor. She walked to the command deck, her steps steady, her expression unreadable. "Report," she said. The AI's voice filled the chamber, the same cold, synthetic voice that had spoken to the Vortak. But now it carried something else. Something almost like relief. "All threats neutralized, Captain. The fleet that attacked us has been destroyed. Survivors were released to carry a warning. The warning that human space is not to be scanned, not to be approached, not to be challenged." Captain Vance nodded slowly. She looked at the view screen, at the nebulous crimson clouds, at the scattered wreckage of the Vortak fleet still drifting in the distance. And the other ships, still sleeping. "The signal has not been sent." "Good." She turned from the screen. "Wake the crew. We have work to do." The AI hesitated, a strange thing for a machine. "Captain, the Vortak will spread the warning. Other empires will hear. They may prepare. They may return with a larger fleet." "Let them," Vance said. "That's why we're here." She walked to the command chair and sat down. The ship hummed around her, alive again, ready again. She placed her hand on the armrest, and the lights on the bridge brightened. The dreadnought was awake. Not just its weapons, its crew. Humans who had waited generations for this moment. Outside, the nebula swirled, hiding them from prying eyes. But the galaxy knew they were there now. The legend was real. The awakened had returned. And somewhere, in the halls of the Vortak Empire, Admiral Tharn sat alone in his quarters, staring at a holographic image of the dreadnought. He had lost his fleet. He had lost his honor. But he had gained something else, a certainty that the humans were not to be trifled with. He picked up his datapad and began to write. A message to every empire in the galaxy. A warning from someone who had seen the truth with his own eyes. Do not scan their ships. Do not approach their borders. Do not test their patience. They have built something that cannot be defeated. We tried. We failed. Learn from our mistake. Leave the humans alone. The years passed. The warning spread. Empires that had once dismissed humanity as a minor power quietly adjusted their patrol routes. Scouts that had once probed human borders were recalled. The nebula where the dreadnought slept became a forbidden zone, marked on every navigation chart with a single word, awakened. Admiral Tharn never commanded another fleet. He resigned his commission and spent the rest of his life as an advisor, teaching young officers about the mistake he had made. His lectures always ended the same way. Do not scan their ships. Do not awaken what sleeps in the dark. The humans are not weak. They are patient. And patience, armed with Titan-class dreadnoughts, is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. On the 100th anniversary of the battle, a small delegation from the Vortak Empire returned to the nebula. Not to fight. To offer something else. An apology. A single ship, unarmed, broadcasting on all frequencies. We come in peace. We wish to speak with the humans who guard this place. For 3 days, there was no answer. The delegation prepared to leave, assuming the dreadnought had moved on. Then, on the 4th morning, a light appeared in the nebula's depths. Blue. Steady. Unmistakable. The dreadnought emerged from the crimson clouds. It was scarred, ancient, beautiful. Its weapons were cold. Its shields were down. It drifted toward the Vortak vessel and stopped at a respectful distance. A voice filled the comm channels. Not cold. Not synthetic. Human. This is Captain Ilara Vance of the United Earthship Awakened. Your apology is accepted. We have no quarrel with the Vortak people. We never did. We only defend what is ours. The Vortak delegation leader, a young diplomat named Saren, found her voice. Captain Vance. We came to understand, to ask why. Why build such a ship? Why wait in the dark for so long? A pause. Then the captain's voice returned, softer now. Because we have been attacked before. Because we have lost colonies, families, entire generations to empires who thought we were weak. We built the Awakened not to conquer, to ensure that no one would ever think they could take from us again. Saren nodded slowly. And now? What happens now? Another pause. The captain's voice carried something like weariness. Now we go home. Our watch is over. The galaxy has learned. That was the point. The dreadnought turned, its engines flaring blue, and began to drift back toward the nebula. But before it disappeared into the clouds, it transmitted one final message, not to the Vortak, but to every species listening. Humanity does not seek war. We do not seek empire. We seek only to be left in peace. But if you come to our borders with weapons, if you scan our ships, if you test our patience, we will answer. We have answered before. We will answer again. This is not a threat. It is a promise. The dreadnought vanished into the nebula. The Vortak delegation returned home, carrying not fear, but something else. Understanding. Captain Ilara Vance stood on the bridge of the Awakened, watching the stars through the viewscreen. Behind her, her crew worked in quiet efficiency. They had been awake for a year now, repairing systems, updating protocols, preparing for the next threat that might never come. Captain, the AI said, the Vortak delegation has departed. They are broadcasting our message across their networks. Good, Vance said. Let it spread. Captain, what if they come back? What if another empire tests us? Vance smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Then we wake up again. We fight again. We win again. That's what we do. She turned from the viewscreen and walked to the cryo bay. The pods lined the walls, row after row, each one holding a sleeping human. Volunteers who had agreed to defend their species across centuries. She placed her hand on the nearest pod. Rest well, she said quietly. We'll watch for a while longer. Then it'll be your turn. She walked back to the bridge and sat in the command chair. The ship hummed around her, alive and ready. Outside, the nebula swirled, hiding them from the galaxy. But the galaxy knew they were there. The legend of the Awakened would live for generations. And the humans inside would wait, patient, watchful, ready. Not for war. For peace. The kind of peace that comes when no one dares to break it. The Awakened drifted into the crimson clouds. The stars watched. The galaxy remembered. And somewhere in the depths of the ship, a light pulsed, once, twice, like a heartbeat. Waiting. Always waiting. For the next empire. For the next mistake. For the next time humanity needed to remind the galaxy why some ships should never be scanned. The legend was real. The Awakened was real. And the humans inside. They were real, too. Sleeping. Watching. Ready. Always ready. 50 years after the Vortak retreat, the Awakened was decommissioned. Not destroyed. Humans did not destroy their history, but retired. The ship was towed to a permanent orbit above Earth, its weapons permanently sealed, its hull restored to its original gleaming gray. It became a museum. Schoolchildren from across human space filed through its corridors, touching the metal where ancient battles had left scars, standing on the bridge where Captain Ilara Vance had once watched an empire flee. The cryopods were empty now. The volunteers had been awakened, one by one, and given new lives in a galaxy that had finally learned to leave humanity alone. Some chose to stay on Earth. Others returned to the colonies. A few, the ones who could not let go of the watch, joined the new defense fleet, training the next generation to be ready. Captain Vance lived to be 112. She died peacefully, in a small house overlooking the Pacific Ocean, with her grandchildren around her. Her last words were reported to be, "Tell them we kept them safe." That's all that mattered. The Vortak Empire never forgot. The Awakened became a symbol not of fear, but of respect. On the 100th anniversary of the battle, the Vortak returned to the nebula, not with warships, but with a memorial. A simple stone pillar, floating in the void, inscribed with the names of every crew member lost on both sides. At its base, a plaque read, We scanned. We learned. We will not forget. The other empires of the galaxy followed suit. One by one, they established diplomatic relations with Earth. One by one, they signed treaties that respected human borders. The galaxy had not become peaceful, it would never be fully peaceful, but it had become careful. And careful was enough. The awakened remained in orbit, a silent guardian. Children who visited on school trips would press their hands against the cold metal of its hull and ask the same question: did it really destroy a whole fleet? The tour guides would nod. It did. And then it came home. That's what it was built for. In the nebula, the wreckage of the Vortak fleet still drifted, slowly breaking apart, slowly becoming part of the cosmic dust. The crimson cloud swirled, indifferent and eternal. No new ships came to challenge the humans. No new empires tested the border. The legend had done its work. Admiral Tharn's memoirs were published after his death. In them he wrote, "We thought we were scanning a derelict. We were wrong. We were scanning a promise. The humans had built a ship that could not be defeated, and they had placed it in the dark to wait. Not for war, for the end of war. And when we came, they showed us what that meant. I am grateful they let us live. I am grateful they let us warn others. The awakened is not a weapon. It is a lesson. Learn it." The book became a bestseller across the galaxy. It was translated into 400 languages. Schoolchildren in 100 empires read it and learned that size did not equal strength, that arrogance led to ruin, that sometimes the quietest species was the most dangerous. Captain Ilara Vance's great-grandson became an ambassador to the Vortak. At his first official meeting, he presented the Vortak Council with a gift, a small piece of the Awaken's hull, mounted on a stand. "From my grandmother," he said. "She wanted you to have this. She said you earned it." The council accepted in silence. There was nothing else to say. The stars turned. The galaxy continued. And somewhere in orbit above Earth, the awakened drifted, silent, scarred, peaceful. Children pressed their hands against its hull. Tourists took photographs. Engineers maintained its systems, keeping them ready, just in case. But the call never came. The galaxy had learned. The lesson had stuck. And that, more than any weapon, more than any battle, more than any empire, was the victory. The awakened had done what it was built to do. It had protected humanity. It had taught the galaxy to be careful. And now it rested. Not dead. Not forgotten. Just waiting. As it always had been. As it always would be. The legend was real. The awakened was real. And the humans who built it, they were still there. Still watching. Still ready. But for now, they were at peace. And that was enough. That was everything. He sent the message and leaned back in his chair. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But it was all he could do. The galaxy had been warned. Whether it would listen was up to them. But the dreadnought would be there. Waiting. As it always had been. As it always would be. And the crew inside, the humans who had slept for centuries, were awake now. Ready to defend their home. Ready to remind the galaxy why humanity was not to be underestimated. The awakened had risen. And the galaxy would never forget. 50 years after the Vortak retreat, the awakened was decommissioned. Not destroyed. Humans did not destroy their history, but retired. The ship was towed to a permanent orbit above Earth, its weapons permanently sealed, its hull restored to its original gleaming gray. It became a museum. Schoolchildren from across human space filed through its corridors, touching the metal where ancient battles had left scars, standing on the bridge where Captain Ilara Vance had once watched an empire flee. The cryopods were empty now. The volunteers had been awakened, one by one, and given new lives in a galaxy that had finally learned to leave humanity alone. Some chose to stay on Earth. Others returned to the colonies. A few, the ones who could not let go of the watch, joined the new defense fleet, training the next generation to be ready. Captain Vance lived to be 112. She died peacefully, in a small house overlooking the Pacific Ocean, with her grandchildren around her. Her last words were reported to be, "Tell them we kept them safe." That's all that mattered. The Vortak Empire never forgot. The awakened became a symbol not of fear, but of respect. On the 100th anniversary of the battle, the Vortak returned to the nebula, not with warships, but with a memorial. A simple stone pillar, floating in the void, inscribed with the names of every crew member lost on both sides. At its base, a plaque read, "We scanned. We learned. We will not forget." The other empires of the galaxy followed suit. One by one, they established diplomatic relations with Earth. One by one, they signed treaties that respected human borders. The galaxy had not become peaceful, it would never be fully peaceful, but it had become careful. And careful was enough. The Awakened remained in orbit, a silent guardian. Children who visited on school trips would press their hands against the cold metal of its hull and ask the same question: did it really destroy a whole fleet? The tour guides would nod. It did. And then it came home. That's what it was built for. In the nebula, the wreckage of the Vortak fleet still drifted, slowly breaking apart, slowly becoming part of the cosmic dust. The crimson cloud swirled, indifferent and eternal. No new ships came to challenge the humans. No new empires tested the border. The legend had done its work. Admiral Tharn's memoirs were published after his death. In them he wrote, "We thought we were scanning a derelict. We were wrong. We were scanning a promise." The humans had built a ship that could not be defeated, and they had placed it in the dark to wait. Not for war, for the end of war. And when we came, they showed us what that meant. I am grateful they let us live. I am grateful they let us warn others. The Awakened is not a weapon. It is a lesson. Learn it. The book became a bestseller across the galaxy. It was translated into 400 languages. Schoolchildren in 100 empires read it and learned that size did not equal strength, that arrogance led to ruin, that sometimes the quietest species was the most dangerous. Captain Ilara Vance's great-grandson became an ambassador to the Vortak. At his first official meeting, he presented the Vortak Council with a gift, a small piece of the Awakened's hull, mounted on a stand. "From my grandmother," he said. "She wanted you to have this. She said you earned it." The Council accepted in silence. There was nothing else to say. The stars turned. The galaxy continued. And somewhere in orbit above Earth, the Awakened drifted, silent, scarred, peaceful. Children pressed their hands against its hull. Tourists took photographs. Engineers maintained its systems, keeping them ready, just in case. But the call never came. The galaxy had learned. The lesson had stuck. And that, more than any weapon, more than any battle, more than any empire, was the victory. The Awakened had done what it was built to do. It had protected humanity. It had taught the galaxy to be careful. And now it rested. Not dead. Not forgotten. Just waiting. As it always had been. As it always would be. The legend was real. The Awakened was real. And the humans who built it. They were still there. Still watching. Still ready. But for now, they were at peace. And that was enough. That was everything.